The first night in that shack, the cold came in so hard that the water they'd carried in a plastic jug froze solid by morning. There was no door, just a warped sheet of plywood leaned against the frame, and the wind found every gap in the old boards. The mother wrapped both children in every blanket they owned, then lay down on the outside of the pile so her own body would take the cold first. That's the part nobody tells you about being homeless. It isn't one big dramatic moment. It's 1,000 small decisions about who gets warm and who goes without. This is the story of a mother and her 2 children who found an abandoned shack at the edge of a forgotten lot, a place the whole town had walked past for years, and slowly turned it into a home. Not a house. Anyone can find 4 walls. A home is something else entirely, and by the end of this, you'll understand exactly why. You'll also hear about one neighbor who changed everything for this family, and the quiet reason she did it that nobody saw coming. They didn't pick that shack because it was good. They picked it because it was empty. It was dry in most corners, and nobody wanted it. That's how these places get found. A tired family walking a broken country road with a single backpack, looking for anywhere the rain couldn't reach. The little building had stood abandoned for the better part of a decade, near the outskirts of a small Midwestern town. The paint long gone gray, weeds grown up around a sagging porch. The last owner was long gone. The windows were shattered, the floorboards were half rotted through near the back, and there was a smell of damp wood that never quite left. But there was a roof over it, and when you have nothing, a roof is everything. Let me walk you through what they actually did, because this is the part that matters most, and it's the part that might one day help someone you love. The first job was the wind. Cold doesn't kill you slowly through the walls. It sneaks in through the gaps. So before they worried about anything comfortable, the mother went after every crack in the timber with her bare hands. They stuffed the spaces between the boards with rags, with flattened cardboard, with plastic grocery bags packed in tight. An old blue tarp got nailed over the biggest broken window. The plywood at the doorway got tied on with a length of frayed rope so it could finally close and stay closed against the wind. It wasn't pretty. It looked like exactly what it was. But that first rough bit of work meant the second night was warmer than the first, and when you're living like this, a slightly warmer night feels like a small miracle. It also told the children something important. Their mother was not giving up. Then came the floor. That rotted patch near the back was dangerous, especially with 2 children running around a dim room. Therefore, she pulled up the worst of the soft, blackened boards and laid down wooden shipping pallets they'd dragged one at a time from behind a grocery store across town. Pallets are the quiet currency of people surviving with nothing, free, everywhere, and strong as anything. On top of the pallets went layers of flattened cardboard, and over that a piece of old brown carpet somebody had rolled up and left out on the curb for the garbage. Suddenly the cold stopped rising up through their feet. In a place like this, your feet are always cold, and warm feet change your whole day. They change your whole outlook. I want you to notice something already. Not one thing they did required money. It required looking at other people's garbage differently. A tossed-out pallet, a thrown-away carpet, a torn tarp somebody thought was worthless. To this family, those were building materials. That single shift in how you see the world is the first thing that separates the people who survive from the people who give up. And this mother had it in spades. Now, heat, and this is where it gets serious, because heat is where people make the mistakes that cost them their lives. They had no electricity and no gas. What they had was a rusted little wood-burning stove they'd found dumped and half buried in a wooded ravine, hauled up the slope, and cleaned out by hand. But here's the crucial part, the part that kept all 3 of them breathing. They ran the smoke out through a proper metal pipe, cut through the wall, and sealed carefully around the edge with scrap and mud. Ventilation is not optional. Every single winter, people trying to stay warm in places just like this die, not from the cold, but from the invisible fumes of burning something indoors, with no way for the smoke to escape. This mother understood that in her bones. Fire kept her children alive, and fire done wrong would have killed them in their sleep. She respected that difference, and respecting it saved their lives. For fuel, they walked. Fallen branches gathered from the woods after a windy night, scrap lumber from a construction site on the edge of town, where the workers were usually glad to see someone haul it away. Broken pallets that had finished their job as flooring and were now firewood. The children learned to spot dry, seasoned wood, the way other kids learned to spot candy in a store. Everyone had a role. Even the little 6-year-old girl carried her own small bundle of sticks home every single day, cradled in both arms, proud as anything you've ever seen. And that pride, that feeling of being useful, of pulling your weight in the family, is worth more than most people ever realize. A child who feels helpful does not feel helpless. Remember that. It matters more than warm clothes. Water was the next mountain to climb. No plumbing, no tap, nothing at all. In the beginning, they carried it in jugs from a public spigot at a park nearly a mile away. And if you've never had to carry all your water by hand, understand that it quietly changes everything about how you live. You don't waste a single drop. You use the same basin of water to rinse the vegetables, then to wash your hands, then to wipe down the floor. Nothing gets poured out until it's truly done its work. Later, when the weather warmed, they rigged up crooked gutters to catch rainwater off the tin roof into a pair of old barrels, and that cut their long walk in half. For drinking, they boiled everything on the wood stove, always, without exception, because getting sick when you have no home and no doctor is a spiral you may never climb out of. Now, I told you this family survived a winter, and I need to tell you about the worst night of it, because it's the night that nearly broke them. It came in February, a storm the whole region had been warned about. The temperature dropped so low, the nails in the walls went white with frost on the inside. The wind wasn't just cold now, it was violent, tearing at the blue tarp over the window until a corner ripped loose, and the freezing air came pouring in like water through a broken dam. The fire in the little stove was fighting a losing battle, and that same plastic jug, the one that had frozen on the very first night, froze solid again, right there beside them, a small, cruel reminder of exactly where they'd started. The mother stayed awake the entire night. She fed the stove stick by stick. She pressed both children between her body and the warmest wall, and she watched the tarp flap and prayed the rope would hold. By the time the gray morning finally came, the storm had blown itself out. All three of them were still breathing. And she sat there in the cold light, shaking, not from the cold anymore, but from the sheer relief of having made it to sunrise. That morning, she told me later, was the closest she ever came to walking to a phone and giving her children up, just so they'd be warm somewhere. But she looked at their sleeping faces, and she couldn't do it. So she got up, and she fixed the tarp, and she kept going. That is the kind of strength that doesn't make the news, but it's the kind that raises human beings. If this story is moving you the way it moves me, take 1 second and subscribe. I share these real stories of ordinary people surviving impossible odds every single week, and it truly means the world to have you here for them. Now let's keep going, because what happens next is the part that slowly turns a shelter into a home. There's staying clean, and people assume that when you're homeless, you simply stop caring about being clean. The opposite is true. When the world treats you like you don't matter, staying clean is how you tell yourself, quietly and stubbornly, that you still do. This mother heated water on the wood stove, and the family took what the old-timers used to call a basin wash. 1 pot of warm water, a clean cloth, and a single bar of cheap soap rationed out like it was gold. The children were washed first, always, no matter how tired she was. Their few clothes were scrubbed by hand in a plastic bucket and hung on a line strung between 2 bare trees, and on the good days the sun and the wind did the drying for free. On the bad days, the wet laundry hung around the wood stove, and the whole shack filled up with the smell of soap and wood smoke. To that family, that particular smell was the smell of not giving up. They also dug a proper spot for waste, well away from where they slept and well away from their water. This matters more than anything comfortable, because sickness is the thing that turns hard times into deadly times. They knew that by pure instinct: distance, cover, cleanliness. The same old knowledge that kept human beings alive for thousands of years before indoor plumbing was ever dreamed of. Then there's food. And feeding a family of 3 on almost nothing is a real skill, a genuine one. And this mother had it. She knew which shops set their day-old bread out where someone could take it, with a little dignity intact. She knew the bruised and bent vegetables at the farmer's market went for pennies at closing time, or sometimes for nothing at all if you smiled and asked kindly. She learned which wild greens grew along the roadside ditches, and which mushrooms in those woods would kill you, and she never once, not a single time, guessed on that second thing. A big pot of soup simmering on that wood stove could stretch across 3 whole days. Beans, whatever vegetables she'd gathered, a handful of foraged herbs, a little salt, it filled that broken-down shack with a smell that made it feel, for a few precious hours, like every other home in the world where somebody is cooking dinner for the people they love. And that's the thing you slowly start to feel, watching this family. The shack was falling apart, but inside it, day by day, something whole was being built. The children still went to school. Let that land for just a second. Every single morning, faces washed in cold water, hair combed with an old comb, wearing the cleanest clothes they owned. Those 2 children walked to school like any other kids in that town, and most of their classmates never had the faintest idea where they slept at night. Their mother made that happen on purpose, at real cost to herself, because school was normal, and normal was a gift she could still give them. In a life where nearly everything had been taken away, routine was something she could hand her children right back. Homework got done by the light of a single wind-up lantern. Storybooks got read aloud in the dark until small eyes closed. And there was laughter in that shack. Real, genuine laughter. If you walked past on the road, you'd have seen a ruin. If you'd stood quiet inside at night, you'd have heard a family. There was one afternoon, the little girl came home from school, glowing, because her teacher had pinned her drawing up on the classroom wall, right in the center, for everyone to see. A drawing of her house, she'd told the class. A drawing of home. She'd drawn the crooked little shack, the tin roof, the smoke curling up from the stovepipe, and 3 stick figures out front holding hands. Her mother kept that drawing. Of everything they owned, that scrap of paper was the thing she'd have run back into a fire to save. Now, the neighbors were the hardest part of all of this. At first, there was fear, and honestly, there was some cruelty too. People are frightened of the homeless, because deep down, they know exactly how close they themselves are to it. A few complained to each other over fences. A few wanted the family gone from that lot. There were long nights the mother lay awake, wondering if someone official would come to tear down the little world she'd built with her own raw hands. That particular fear never quite leaves you when the roof over your head isn't legally yours. It sits in your chest like a stone. But then something happened, the way it so often does, right when hope runs thinnest. One neighbor, an older woman who lived alone down the road and had noticed those 2 children walking to school every morning, started leaving things by the side of the road near the shack. A paper bag of warm clothes her grandchildren had outgrown. A cardboard box of tinned food, never a word about it, never a trace of shame attached, just left quietly where they'd be sure to find it on their way past. Then a man from a few houses over dropped off an old but working electric space heater and a can of fuel, no questions asked, no lecture given. Kindness is quiet like that. It doesn't announce itself or ask for thanks. And slowly, one by one, a few of those neighbors stopped seeing squatters on a forgotten lot and started seeing a family doing their absolute best with nothing at all. That shift, from suspicion to plain human warmth, is the thing that saves a family. It's the whole difference between them making it through the winter and being driven back out onto that cold road. But here's the part that stayed with me most. That older woman, the one who started it all with a bag of clothes by the road, she had a reason nobody knew. 40 years earlier, when she was young and newly widowed with a baby on her hip, she had been the one with nowhere to go. A stranger had taken her in for a winter and asked for nothing in return. She never forgot it. And when she saw those two children walking to school in the cold, something in her chest that had waited 4 decades finally had somewhere to go. She wasn't being charitable, she was paying back a debt to someone who had died long ago, in the only way left to her. That is how kindness actually moves through the world. Not in straight lines, in long, patient circles that take a lifetime to close. So what is a home, really? Because this family answered that question better than most of us who have never once had to ask it. A home is not the quality of the roof over it. It isn't the address, or the size of the rooms, or whether the paperwork downtown has your name typed on it. A home is the place where the people you love are safe, where there's warmth waiting at night, where a child can finish her homework and fall asleep without being afraid, where somebody stirs a pot of soup on the stove and everyone sits down together to eat it. By that measure, that broken-down shack at the edge of a forgotten lot was more of a home than plenty of grand houses I could name for you. They built it out of pallets, cardboard, stubbornness, and love. Mostly, in the end, out of love. I won't pretend this story ties up in a perfect bow, because a life lived on the edge rarely does. But the last that anyone knew, they were still together, still warm, and those two children were still walking to school with their heads held high. That is not a small ending. In a life like this one, that is a victory. That is very nearly everything. Now, if you're watching this, chances are you have a soft heart, and chances are good that you know someone who is struggling right now, this very winter. Maybe a grown son who lost his job and is too proud to say how bad it's gotten. A neighbor whose old car finally died. Someone you love who is closer to that shack than they would ever admit out loud to you. You can't fix all of it, and I would never tell you that you could, but you can hand them something real and useful. Some good people put together a free guide called The Veteran's Blueprint. It's plain and practical, with no lectures and no selling. How to stay warm safely through a hard winter. How to stretch food and water when there's almost none. How to hold on to your dignity when the money runs out. It was written by people who lived through the very hardest version of this and came out the other side to help others. The link is waiting for you in the description below. If someone came to mind while you watched this story, send it to them today, quietly, the way that older woman left a bag of clothes by the road. It costs you nothing, and it might just be the kindest thing you do all week. Because nobody, and I mean nobody, should ever have to face the cold alone. Take care of yourselves, and take care of each other.